She won't be around much longer. Then we can deal with the house. That was the very first thing I heard when they slipped the oxygen mask off my face. It wasn't a nurse, not a doctor. It was my own daughter's voice, calm, casual, like she was reading off the weather report. I kept my eyes shut, listening. Maybe she thought I was asleep. Maybe she didn't care. I told Mark we'll get the house soon. Mom can't last much longer. The doctor practically said so. A chair scraped across the floor. My grandson mumbled something about probate paperwork needing my signature while I was still what? Alive. I stayed quiet until their footsteps faded. Then I opened my eyes and stared at the ceiling, flat, pale, pockmarked. Cold and unfamiliar. Just like the way they spoke about me. I pressed the nurse call button. Not because I needed help, but because I wanted to hear a voice that wasn't already planning my funeral. A young nurse came in, tired but kind. I asked for my purse. She hesitated, said she didn't think it was in the drawer. I pointed. The brown one. She brought it over and I unzipped it slowly, hands shaking. Buried under tissues and old receipts was the one thing they were waiting for, the deed. My house. My name. No one else's. I pressed it against my chest for a second. They thought I was about to die. Maybe I was. But I wasn't going to die like that. Not as a line on somebody else's inheritance list. When they wheeled me out of the hospital, the weather had turned. September in Ohio does that, sunshine one day, cold spit the next. Linda was standing by the car, eyes glued to her phone. She barely looked up as they loaded me in. Watch her leg, she told the nurse. She bruises like old fruit. She didn't mean it sweetly. Mark sat in the driver's seat tapping at the GPS, didn't even bother to get out. The ride home was silent, but not the kind that brings peace. The kind that feels like a dog watching from the corner of the room, waiting for you to drop something. At the house, Mark finally moved to drag my wheelchair out of the trunk. They got me home, sure, but it wasn't out of love. It was strategy. Linda busied herself with my pillows, my medications, the nurse's schedule. But not once did she ask how I was feeling. Just when I should take the blood thinner and whether I could still sign papers. When she unpacked my hospital bag, her hand went straight for the purse. I watched her from the recliner. My eyes may be dim, but I can still read intentions clear as glass. You looking for something? My voice came out dry but steady. She jumped just a little, then plastered on that fake smile she's been wearing since her 20s. Just the house keys. They were on the ring, right? No one's changing the locks, don't be silly, Mom. It's just for safety. Mark's going to help organize all the house documents just in case. Just in case I died, she meant. I nodded like I was too tired to argue, turned my face toward the window. The deed was tucked under my pillow. That night I heard them whispering in the kitchen, their voices carrying the same tone people use at estate sales. A mix of excitement and guilt. She's still got it somewhere, Mark said. She'll forget about it eventually. She's not all there anymore. Not all there. I was more present than they realized. And the next morning, I'd make a call that reminded them exactly who still lived in this house. I waited until they left for groceries. I knew their routine well by now. Leave me propped in front of the TV with lukewarm tea and a blanket I never asked for. Then disappear for just long enough. Perfect. I slipped the envelope with the deed into my cardigan pocket and shuffled to the phone. It took me 3 tries to dial the lawyer's number. Not because I'd forgotten it, I hadn't. My hands trembled. Not from weakness but from clarity. The kind that comes when you finally stop hoping people will change. Yes, hello, I said when the receptionist answered. This is Helen Grant. I'd like to schedule a private consultation. Urgent. She was polite, efficient. We can fit you in tomorrow at 10 a.m. Do you need assistance getting inside? No, I said firmly. I'll get there. After I hung up, I sat holding the receiver like it was something holy, because in a way it was the first thing I'd done entirely for myself in years. That evening, Linda walked in wearing too much mint on her breath. A smile stretched too wide. We were thinking, she said, sliding onto the armrest beside me. Maybe we should start sorting through the attic boxes. You never know what's up there. Old papers, maybe even titles or documents you forgot about. My stomach turned. We could make a little folder, she went on, reaching for my hand. Just so when the time comes. I pulled my hand away. I'll be handling my own documents. My voice was flat, final. She froze, then brushed imaginary crumbs off her jeans. Of course. We were only trying to help. Help. Like when they helped by taking over my checkbook. Like when they helped by driving me to appointments and staying in the room. It wasn't care. It was custody. That night I locked my bedroom door. Not out of fear. Out of resolve. I was done pretending to be grateful for a cage wrapped in kindness. At 9:10 the next morning I was dressed. Nothing fancy. Pressed gray slacks, a clean blouse, my wool cardigan with the steady buttons. I looked in the mirror and finally saw someone I hadn't in a long time. Me. The taxi driver tried small talk, but I wasn't in the mood. I stared out the window as the town drifted by. Same streets, same cracked sidewalks, same corner store with the rusted ice machine. Everything looked the same. Everything except me. By 9:52 I was in the law office lobby, the deed pressed close against my side. At exactly 10 they called my name. Mr. Dawson, the lawyer, was maybe in his 40s, kind eyes, quiet voice. He didn't speak down to me, which already made him better than most. I understand you'd like to review your estate documents, he said as I sat across from his desk. No, I told him. I'd like to revoke them. He paused, eyebrows raised. All of them. Yes. He opened a folder, pulled up a file on his computer. You have a will from 2014 naming your daughter, Linda Hayes, as your primary heir and executor. Is that the one you'd like to cancel? I nodded. And the power of attorney. Any access to my finances. Everything gone. Starting today. He leaned back, careful, measured. Of course. May I ask? I'm not being dramatic, I cut in. I'm not confused. I'm not sick. I'm angry. And that's different. He gave me a slow, respectful nod. I was in the hospital last week, I continued. On oxygen, couldn't speak, barely breathing. And I heard my own daughter whisper to my grandson that they'd get the house soon. Mr. Dawson didn't flinch. Just folded his hands. I'm sorry to hear that. I'm not, I said, because it woke me up. I raised that girl alone after her father died. Worked 3 jobs some years. Paid cash for that house. And now I'm supposed to fade away so she can upgrade her kitchen? I slid the deed across the desk. This is mine. Stays mine until I decide otherwise. And I want protections in place so no one touches it while I'm alive. And no one assumes they will afterward. He nodded. We can establish a trust and a new will. Today, I'll have you sign documents revoking the old ones. I listened carefully as he explained each paper. No nodding along, no handing over the reins. I'd done that too long. By 10:47 I was signing the last form. My hand didn't shake. When I dotted the final I felt something uncoil in my chest. Do you have a new beneficiary in mind? He asked. I thought of Linda's face, Mark's silence, their whispers in the kitchen. Then I thought of someone else. My great-niece Emily, I said slowly. She's 23. Comes by sometimes just to help in the yard. Never asks for a thing. Last week she brought me a pie she baked herself because I mentioned I missed Peach. He wrote the name down carefully. For now, he asked. For now, I said. If she changes, I'll change it back. I'm not naive anymore. He smiled faintly, then stood. We'll finalize next week, but as of today, the revocation is active. I shook his hand, firm, steady. I don't think he expected that. On the cab ride home, the air tasted different. Lighter. Like the heaviness in my chest hadn't just been from my lungs after all. Linda was waiting at the front door. Arms crossed, suspicion all over her face. Where were you? Out. Out where? None of your business. She blinked, caught off guard. I was worried. No, I corrected, brushing past her. You were curious. I went straight to my room, tucked the new documents into the locked drawer of my desk. Let them search the attic all they wanted. By the time they realized what had changed, I'd be long done playing the part they cast me in. They knew something was different. I saw it in the way they hovered. Linda poking her head in under excuses about pillows or laundry. Mark loitering in the hall, offering help with bills, with paperwork, with tech stuff. I let them circle me like vultures around a meal that refused to die. You've been acting strange, Linda said one night over dinner. She'd made spaghetti, As if carbs could soften my resolve. Strange how? I asked, not looking up from my plate. I don't know. Just distant. I've been dying, remember? I said dryly, stabbing at the noodles. Her fork froze midair. That's not what I meant. But it was. She wanted the old me back, the one who nodded, signed, smiled through being erased. I got a call from the bank, she added too casually. They mentioned some document changes. You didn't tell me. That's because it doesn't concern you. Her eyes narrowed. I thought we agreed. No. You decided. I stayed silent. That's not agreement. Her mask cracked then, just for a second. I excused myself before she recovered, tea in hand. Behind me I heard Mark mutter. She's going to make things difficult. Difficult? As if I were the obstacle to their prize. That night I pulled open my drawer. Inside was the folder, neatly labeled in Emily's careful handwriting. Aunt Helen's stuff, important. I hadn't told her everything yet. I wasn't ready. But I trusted her hands more than any blood relative I had left. The next morning Linda upped her game. I scheduled a home nurse, she announced cheerfully. Just once a week. Insurance covers most of it. And the rest? I asked. We'd cover it, of course. It's for your health, Mom. For control, I thought. Out loud I said, cancel it. But, no. The word was soft but final. It didn't need volume. She froze, then stormed off down the hall. A door slammed. That evening I went up to the attic. Not for papers but for the box of photographs I'd kept hidden. Not in albums, not on shelves, just a plain box of moments I couldn't lose. Me and Robert the summer before he died. Linda at 5, covered in mud. Me on the porch, holding the church fair baking trophy. Proof of who I was. A builder, a mother, a woman who had survived loss without losing herself. Until I did. But not anymore. Downstairs I heard the TV switch on. Mark's heavy steps. Linda pacing in the kitchen, jaw tight, fingers busy on her phone. They thought they were managing a woman on her last legs. They had no idea I'd only just stood up. I wasn't always like this, you know. There was a time I said yes to everything. Not out of weakness. Don't let anyone tell you that. Out of necessity. When Robert died I was 38, raising a daughter alone, with a mortgage that wouldn't wait for grief. There wasn't time for softness. I woke up the next morning and went straight to work. 3 jobs, day shifts, night shifts, weekends. I scrubbed other people's houses, ran a tiny secondhand shop out of the garage, stitched hems and buttons for folks who couldn't even meet my eyes. I paid off that mortgage 12 years early. That house wasn't luck, wasn't charity. It was blood and bone, and every hour of my life poured into it. They talk about it now like it's just a relic, but it's not. It's mine. I picked that yellow paint. I chose the windows that stick every spring. I planted that big maple tree still standing stubborn in the front yard. I didn't inherit it. I built it. Linda used to understand that when she was little. She'd sit on the kitchen floor while I worked the sewing machine. I'd hand her scraps and she'd piece together dresses for her dolls. Crooked sleeves, buttons for eyes. Ugly little things, but she was curious, bright, always watching. That girl disappeared sometime in her second year of college, right around the time she met Mark. After that, she barely came home unless she needed something, a loan, a letter of recommendation, help with a move, help with the baby. Always some kind of trouble, always short on cash, always clinging to the next big thing. And me? I gave. Because that's what mothers do. Because I wanted to believe they just needed a little more time. Because I told myself it was temporary. But the years passed and nothing changed, except their sense of entitlement. It wasn't cruel at first. Just careless. They'd bring a cheap bottle of wine and call it a visit. Linda would roll her eyes when I didn't have oat milk. Mark would half fix something in the yard, then leave it unfinished. They'd tell me how lucky I was to have them around, even as they left with bags of leftovers and borrowed cash. I stayed quiet, thought silence was the cost of closeness. But the older I got, the more invisible I became. By the time I turned 78, Linda had started calling the house theirs. I remember her saying, "When we redo the upstairs, after you settle into assisted living." I stood at the sink, hand deep in dishwater, wondering how long they'd stopped seeing me as a person and started seeing me as temporary. It all came to a head the year I fell in the garden. Just a sprained wrist, nothing major. But Mark insisted on installing a camera in the living room for emergencies. What he didn't say was that it pointed right at the front door. I caught on quick. After that, the calls came more often, but never about me. Always about the house, the insurance, the future. Always the future, never the now. And the worst part? I started believing them. Started thinking maybe I was a burden. Maybe I was in the way. Maybe it was time to make life easier for them. That's when Linda brought me the forms. Quiet, sweet, like it was nothing. Just in case something happens, Mom, she said, laying out the papers like a picnic. This is just power of attorney. Just about the house. You'd still live here. I was tired. My ankles were swollen. The oven had stopped working. I signed. That was 3 years ago. And ever since, they've acted like I handed them the keys to my soul. But last week, when I lay in that hospital bed fighting for air, listening to my daughter whisper to her son about how soon they'd get the house, something in me broke. And at my age, when something breaks inside you, you don't glue it back. You throw it out. You start over. Now, when I see the house, I don't see a burden. I see a boundary. A line I should have drawn years ago, and one I've finally drawn now. I hadn't meant to find the folder. It was tucked in the drawer of the old desk in the guest room, the one Linda started using as her office, when she decided to stay over a few nights a week to keep an eye on things. I'd gone in just looking for my sewing kit. My cardigan pocket lining was tearing, and I didn't want to ask for their help. The folder was plain manila, thick with papers. My name was on the first page. Not the shock of seeing my name, but the words under it. Application for adult guardianship. I sat down hard. Each page was worse than the last. Medical forms I'd never laid eyes on. A typed letter, supposedly from me, asking the court to grant Linda Hayes full authority over my estate and decisions, because of progressive cognitive decline and vulnerability to manipulation. Manipulation. The signature line was still blank. A sticky note clung to the last page in Linda's handwriting. Need Helen's signature before December. Otherwise, we'll need affidavit from Dr. Patel. Dr. Patel. My own doctor. The one who always asked about my crocheting, who told me I didn't look a day over 70. I felt sick, not faint, not dizzy. Sick, like something heavy had risen from my stomach and lodged in my throat. This wasn't about helping me. This was an ambush. A legal muzzle dressed up as care. I stood, folder in hand, and went straight to the shredder I'd kept since my tax prep days. Page after page I fed it through. Some people scream. Some throw things. Me? I use a machine with teeth. That night, I locked the guest room door. When Linda knocked, I said I was sleeping. She asked if I'd seen her planning binder. No, I said flatly. I don't keep track of your plans. She laughed brittle. Probably left it in the car. Right. She never brought it up again. The next day, I called Dr. Patel's office. Hello, this is Helen Grant. I need a full copy of my medical file. And I want to know if anyone's contacted you about signing anything on my behalf. The nurse sounded puzzled. I'm not aware of anything like that, ma'am, but I'll flag your file. I'll note that no third-party inquiries are to be processed without your direct consent. Yes, I said firmly. Put it in writing. Then I called Mr. Dawson and told him what I'd found. He was quiet for a moment, then said, That crosses a line. I'll prepare a notarized statement confirming your mental and legal competence. And if they try to push this, we'll contest it hard. I thanked him and hung up. Then I sat in my chair and looked around. This house had been mine for 4 decades. I'd repainted the walls, patched the roof, replaced the furnace twice. There wasn't a door I hadn't closed with my own hands. And now my own daughter was trying to use my age as a crowbar to pry it from me. I thought of Robert, what he might have said, what he might have done. But Robert never lived long enough to face this. He died at 58, dignity intact, with his wife at his side and his child still asking him for advice. Not his will. Me? I was learning what happens after that. When they stop seeing you as a person and start seeing you as an opportunity. Fine. Let them look at the surface. Underneath, I was already miles ahead. Walls reinforced, locks changed, literally and otherwise. Linda still strutted around like she was closing in, but I wasn't retreating anymore. I was waiting. It happened on a Tuesday, an ordinary day for something extraordinary. The night before, I sat in my chair by the window, lamp dimmed, silence heavy. I'd had the new documents reprinted, signed, sealed. I tucked them in a folder labeled in bold black letters. HG Legal. I didn't hide it. I set it right on the kitchen counter. Let them see. Let them wonder. Linda spotted it first. Her lips tightened, but she didn't ask. Not yet. She clattered dishes louder than usual, filled my pill tray like she was handling dynamite. She didn't sleep in the guest room that night. The next morning I was finishing my toast when she came in. No good morning. Just stiff shoulders, clenched jaw, voice sharp as a paper cut. What is this? She asked, holding the file. I didn't pretend. That's my business. You revoked everything, she said low like she couldn't believe it. The will, the power of attorney, all of it. I nodded. But why? Her face twisted between insult and disbelief. After everything we've done for you. I looked her square in the eye. What exactly have you done for me, Linda? Excuse me. Tell me what you've done for me that wasn't about you, about Mark, about the house. I folded my napkin, set it down neatly. Because as far as I can recall, every casserole came with a question about my accounts. Every errand ended with a conversation about the property. Every pill refill turned into a discussion about easing your burden. That's not fair, she snapped. We've been here, haven't we? Taking care of things, making sure you're safe, not overwhelmed. Safe from what? I asked. Overwhelmed by what? My own life? You're getting older, Mom. You don't think as clearly, you don't move as fast. You need help. No, I said firmly. I need respect. That stopped her. I need to be asked, not handled. I need to be seen as a person, not a problem to solve. And I need my daughter to stop treating me like a placeholder in her real estate plans. Her cheeks flushed. We weren't. You were. My voice was steady. And I heard you in the hospital, Linda. I heard you tell Mark the house would be yours soon. That I wouldn't last much longer. That the doctor said so. Her lips parted but no sound came. She sank into the chair, knees folding under her. I didn't mean. But you said it. And now I know where I stand. She stared at her hands, finally quiet. You're angry, she whispered. I get that. But don't throw away your family over one bad moment. I laughed dry, bitter. This wasn't a moment. It was a campaign. She tried another angle. What about Mark? What about all the help we've given, the hours we've spent? You weren't helping, I said. You were investing. You just thought the payout would come sooner. Linda shot to her feet, arms crossed tight. So what now? You just cut us out? No, I answered calmly. I just put everything back where it belongs, under my name, my terms. If that feels like being cut out, maybe you ought to ask yourself why. She didn't reply. She stormed out of the room with heavy, echoing steps, clutching the file in her hand. But I wasn't shaken. The true documents were safe at the bank. What she held was nothing more than a decoy. I sank back into my chair, feeling the pulse in my fingers calm. My breathing returned to steady. I hadn't spoken out of anger, but out of truth. No shouting, no pleading, just clarity. And I didn't regret a word of it. The days after felt like the quiet that follows a storm. Grass bent, branches broken, but the air clear in a way you almost forgot existed. Linda stopped sleeping over. Mark didn't show up at all. The house finally returned to its own rhythm. Creaking floors, the steady tick of the stove clock, the sound of my own footsteps, mine alone. At first, I mistook that silence for loneliness. And maybe it was. I'd lived so long inside their noise, their moods, their demands, I'd forgotten the feel of being alone in my own space. For years, I'd grown used to people hovering around me without really seeing me. Now no one hovered and I could finally breathe. I slowed down in the mornings. Made my eggs just the way I liked, over hard, no pepper. Sat at the table with the newspaper instead of being parked in my chair like a patient. Wore my slippers all day simply because I wanted to. The house wasn't empty. It was mine again. On the fourth day, the doorbell rang. I shuffled over, slow but steady, and peered through the glass. Emily. She stood there with a small paper bag in one hand and a folded jacket in the other, hair pinned back like she'd rushed out the door. Her eyes lit up when she saw me. I brought banana bread, she said as I opened the door. It's still warm. I motioned her inside without a word. The living room looked lived in again. My shawl over the couch, a book open on the armrest, my glasses exactly where I'd left them. Emily smiled when she noticed. "You look good," she said, setting the bag on the table. "Rested." "I am." She didn't push, just perched on the couch edge, her eyes moving gently over the room like she was noting every change since the last time she'd been here. "You haven't been answering the phone," she said softly. "No," I replied. "I haven't. Mom said." She stopped herself, corrected. "I mean, Aunt Linda said you weren't feeling well." "Did she now?" I asked. Emily hesitated, then met my eyes. "Was that true?" I smiled, a slow, tired smile. "No. I'm feeling better than I have in years." She let out a breath, her shoulders loosening like she'd been carrying the weight herself. I was hoping that was the truth. We sat in the kind of silence you only get with someone who isn't waiting to fill it. Then she said, "She's mad." I nodded. "I know. They said you're being manipulated. That someone's gotten in your head. That it's not like you to make changes." I sipped my tea. Maybe they never knew what I was like. Maybe they only knew what was convenient. Emily looked down at her hands. "When I was little, I thought this house was magic. Not just because of the cookies or the way the curtains smelled like cinnamon, but because it felt alive, like it knew me, like I belonged here. That nearly broke me." "You do belong," I said softly. Her head lifted, eyes wide. I leaned closer. "Emily, I didn't make these choices out of spite. I made them because I remembered I get to have a say in my own life. And I remembered who's shown up for me without asking for anything back." Her eyes welled, but she didn't look away. "I never did it for that." "I know," I said. "That's why it matters." We talked for over an hour about her job, her ridiculous cat, the garden project she was helping with. I told her everything about the documents. Watched her face as I explained, not for judgment but for understanding, and I saw it plain as day. "You're not alone," she said, squeezing my hand. "Even if it feels like it." It did. But not as much now. After she left, I sat for a long time in the quiet. Then I did something small, almost sacred. I took out a fresh notepad and wrote her name at the top. Not just as an heir, but as a witness. A reminder that even in the long shadows of age, a life can still be re-anchored. I folded the page and tucked it into my legal folder. Not everything had to be a fight. Some things could just be chosen. The next morning, I woke before dawn, like I used to before the years weighed me down. I made my coffee strong the way Robert liked it and drank it black just to prove to myself I still could. By 8, I was dressed and at the kitchen table with a notepad. My writing was slower these days, but my thoughts weren't. I made a list: banks, insurance accounts. No more accidents. No more "oh, she forgot" mishaps. Linda was always good at spinning stories. By 9:30, I was at the bank. The staff greeted me with polite smiles, surprise flickering under their eyes, like they couldn't believe I still walked in on my own. "Yes, I do." A young banker with parted hair ushered me into a small room. He looked like the kind who still let his mother do his taxes. "How can we help you today, Mrs. Grant?" I placed the folder on the table. "I need to restructure everything. And I want you to walk me through it like I've never seen $1 in my life." He blinked. "Of course." 2 hours later, I'd closed 3 accounts, opened a new one in my name only, and set up alerts for every transaction. Every permission Linda and Mark had was gone. It felt like untangling a necklace I didn't even realize was choking me. Then I asked about a trust. "Are you planning to transfer property?" he asked. "I'm planning to protect what's mine," I answered. He nodded slowly. "We can bring in our estate specialist." "Already have one," I said. "Mr. Dawson. Link everything to what he's drafting." "Yes, ma'am." We finished the details. I named Emily a successor trustee. She wouldn't know for a while, not yet. That wasn't the point. The point was having a plan. I walked home instead of calling for a ride. The air was crisp, leaves just starting to turn, smoke from fireplaces carrying on the breeze. The walk was slow, but every step was mine. When I reached the house, I stood outside for a long moment just looking. The porch still sagged a little where Mark had promised to fix it 3 winters ago. The shutters needed paint. But the house was sturdy. Still mine. Inside, I brewed real black to none of Linda's fancy herbal blends, and sweetened it with honey. Then I opened my new ledger and wrote, October 14th. Financial accounts secured, property placed in trust, all prior authorizations revoked. Copies delivered to Mr. Dawson, personal copies in fireproof box. I am not a placeholder. I am not an obstacle. I am the author of my own ending. The pen bit deep into the page. I liked that. I wanted the mark to last. That afternoon I called Emily. I've made some decisions, I told her. About the house? She asked carefully. About everything. A pause. Do you want to talk about it? Not yet. But when the time comes it'll make sense. I trust you. For words. They softened something in me I hadn't even realized was still clenched. Thank you, I whispered. We talked after about small things, her rain barrels, her cat clawing at laundry. I laughed more than I'd planned to. When I hung up, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt steady. That evening, the mailbox rattled. I shuffled out, expecting junk flyers. Instead, a white envelope with no return address. Inside, Linda's handwriting. Just one line: we need to talk. No greeting. No apology. No explanation. I folded it back up, dropped it in the trash, and poured another cup of tea. Let her wait. The knock came just before noon. Sharp, impatient, like she'd practiced it. I was at the table, halfway through my crossword and second cup of tea. I didn't rush. Let her stand there long enough to learn the door didn't open on her schedule anymore. When I did answer, she was stiff on the porch, arms crossed, eyes scanning me like I was a patient chart. You've been ignoring my messages, she said. No, I replied, stepping aside. I've been declining to answer them. Her jaw tightened, but she came in anyway. Moved into the living room like it was still hers. I didn't want to do this here, she said, dropping into a chair without asking. But you've left me no choice. You always have a choice, I said, easing into my own seat. You just don't like when other people make theirs. She didn't reply. Instead, she dug into her bag, pulled out a stack of papers, highlighted, tabbed, organized like a battle plan. This is the original estate plan, she said firmly. The one we agreed on. No, I corrected. The one I signed because you shoved it in front of me during a week, when I couldn't even hold a spoon without shaking. Linda let out a long theatrical sigh. You're overreacting. I met her eyes. No, I've been underreacting for 15 years. She tapped the stack of papers like a gavel. Do you even realize what this looks like, Mom? To banks, to lawyers, to the family? Erratic changes to your estate. Cutting out your only child. Handing everything to what, some niece who shows up twice a month? I held her stare. You think this is about money? Her tone sharpened. It's about legacy. About what's reasonable. Emily's just a kid. She doesn't understand what it means to take care of someone like you. I don't need to be taken care of like some broken appliance, I said, voice low but steady. What I need is respect. And that's something you don't seem capable of. That's not true, she snapped. I've done everything for you. No, I answered. You've done everything around me for yourself. Her hands trembled as she shuffled the pages back into order. You're letting your feelings cloud your judgment, she said. Her voice thinning now, more afraid than righteous. I tilted my head. Is that the same story you told the court when you started filing for guardianship behind my back? She froze. Her mask slipped just for a second. Where did you hear that? She asked too quickly. In my own house, I replied. In the desk drawer you didn't think I'd check. Right next to the papers with my forged signature. That's not. She stopped, recalibrated. I was trying to protect you. No, I said softly. You were trying to control me. Her cheeks flushed, the careful mask cracking, the one she wore for neighbors and pharmacists and lawyers. I'd mistaken it for love all these years. Now I saw it clearly for what it was: strategy. I'm not changing the documents back, I told her. Not now. Not ever. Then you're making a huge mistake, she hissed through her teeth. No, I said, pushing myself up, knees stiff but steady. The mistake was believing my silence would earn your loyalty. I won't make that mistake again. She rose too, shoulders tight, eyes burning. I don't think you understand what you're doing. I met her gaze. I understand exactly. When she left, she didn't slam the door. Linda wasn't careless like that. No, she was the kind of person who closed things quietly so no one could hear the damage. But I heard it anyway. I sat back down, picked up my crossword, found my place. 6 down. A state of being whole, undivided. I wrote the word integrity, and for the first time in a long time it didn't feel like a contradiction. It was only a matter of time before the boy showed up. Mark arrived 3 days later, driving his father's old truck like the steel and rust gave him gravitas. He didn't knock, just hovered at the screen door, hands in his pockets, shoulders hunched like a teenager waiting for detention. I opened the door. Waited. "Can I come in?" he asked. I stepped aside without a word. He took my silence as permission. Sat right down in Robert's old chair like it already belonged to him. That rubbed me raw. "I thought maybe we could talk," he said, using that careful voice, squinting like I'd turned the sun up just to spite him. "Things have gotten a little tense." I let the silence stretch until it bristled. "I know Mom came by," he went on. "She's upset. You've made some big changes and I think, well, we think it's worth discussing." "We?" I asked. "Yeah," he said. "Me, Mom, some of the family. Everyone's just confused why you changed the will. Cut us out." "Why Emily?" I didn't look at him. Just lifted my cup, took a slow sip. "She's barely family," he pressed. "She doesn't understand everything you've built. Not like we do." I smiled into my tea. "That's the point." He leaned forward, earnest now. "You're upset. Mom probably said the wrong thing at the wrong time. But cutting us out? That's not you." I finally looked up. "You don't know who I am, Mark." He blinked like I'd struck him. "You've only seen the version of me who signs checks and nods politely," I continued. "The woman who kept the fridge full, the one who gave without question. You never saw the woman who built something out of nothing. The one who didn't take from anybody, even when she should have." He opened his mouth, then shut it. "I was your grandmother when it suited you," I said. "When tuition was due. When your car broke down. When your mother didn't want to pay for Christmas. But not when I needed help with groceries. Not when I was lying in the hospital." "That's not fair," he muttered. "Fair?" I said, my voice rising. "Fair would have been you showing up without a motive. Fair would have been you calling just to ask how I slept." He looked away, jaw clenched. "You tell your mother," I said evenly. "I won't be changing a thing. Showing up in your Sunday manners doesn't erase the fact that you stood beside her in that hospital, talking about how soon you'd have my house." His head snapped back. "You heard that. I wasn't dead yet, Mark." He shot up, started pacing. Okay. Maybe we were wrong. Maybe we got carried away." "Carried away?" I stood too, tired of him looming. "You hovered over my bed and spoke about my home like I was a loose floorboard to pry up." He shook his head. "It was a mistake, okay? But you've made your point loud and clear. What more do you want?" "I don't want anything," I said. And it was true. I wanted peace, not punishment. "So what now?" he asked. "We just pretend none of this happened?" "No," I told him. "We stopped pretending it ever did." He swallowed, the mask slipping. For a moment he looked like a boy caught stealing from a drawer. "Look," he said. "You're mad, but be careful. People talk. Family notices things." That was the mistake. I stepped closer. "Are you threatening me?" "No, I'm just saying. Get out." He froze. "What?" "You heard me." He waited for me to soften. I didn't. Finally he exhaled, turned and walked out. No slamming. Just the slow crunch of gravel under his boots. I closed the door, locked it. Leaned against it, not shaking, not crying. Just still. That night I slept without dreams. Only silence. Blessed, rightful silence. The next afternoon, the mail brought a small pale green envelope with my name written in Emily's careful hand. No return address. Just Helen across the front. Not Mom. Not Grandma. Not Mrs. Grant. Just my name. As if she saw me the way I wanted to be seen. Not as a role, not as a wallet, not as an obligation, but as a person. I sat at the table and opened it slowly. Inside was a single folded card. Handwritten, no glitter, no pretense. I hope I'm not overstepping. I just wanted to say thank you, for trusting me, for telling me the truth, for letting me sit at your table like it meant something. Because it did. I know I'm not your daughter. I'm not even your granddaughter. But if love is measured by presence and not blood, then maybe I've earned the right to say, I love you, Helen. And I'm proud of you. I sat with the card in my lap for a long time. The clock ticked. The house creaked. The refrigerator hummed its tired little tune. And I didn't move. Because there it was, recognition. Not from the ones I'd fed and clothed and defended for decades, but from the one who simply saw me. A warmth bloomed in my chest. Not the kind that leaks out as tears. The kind that builds into strength. I went to the dresser, pulled out the will Mr. Dawson had drawn up. For weeks, Emily's name had been penciled in temporary. That day I picked up a pen. Permanent ink. No hesitation. Later I baked cornbread, her favorite, and set aside a slice. Tomorrow I'd drive it over. Not as a gesture. Just a visit. Something small. Something that cost nothing but meant everything. That evening I sat on the porch, blanket over my knees, watching the maple leaves dance in the wind like they had somewhere better to be. The sun sank slow, warm against my face, soft against the lawn. And in that moment I didn't feel abandoned. I felt returned to myself. No audience. No performance. Just Helen with her cornbread, her clean will, and her permanent name. Finally in the right place. Linda didn't come back. Not that week. Not the next. No calls. No letters. No cousins sent as messengers with stitched-up concern. Just silence. Mark didn't call either. Though once I spotted his truck parked a few blocks down. Engine off, windows rolled up, just watching. Let them watch. I had nothing left to give. And more importantly, I had nothing left they could take. I thought the loss would sit heavier on me if I'm being honest. I thought there would be grief. After all, I raised Linda. I fed her, bathed her, held her when the nights were too long, and her father's death left a hole so wide it threatened to swallow us both. For years, she was the reason I got out of bed in the morning, the reason I saved pennies in jars, patched her jeans with stitches neat enough to pass inspection. But the grief had already come. It didn't come in a flood. It came slow, drip by drip over decades, like a faucet no one bothered to fix. By the time I turned off the tap, there was no flood waiting. Just quiet. And that's what filled the house now. Quiet. But it wasn't empty. It was clean. There's a difference. No more tense dinners. No more barbed little comments about, when the time comes. No more rummaging through drawers under the disguise of helping. Just the sound of my own breath, the birds outside. The natural rhythm of a home that finally belonged to someone who loved it. I opened the windows again. Played records I hadn't touched in years. Let the maple leaves pile on the porch without sweeping them right away. The house aged alongside me, not against me, and I let it. I started writing again. Little essays, nothing fancy. Truths I'd carried too long in my chest. Stories of when I was a girl, memories of Robert I'd never spoken aloud, small thoughts that came while peeling carrots. I wrote in longhand with a leaky pen that stained my fingers blue. And Emily came by once a week, always unannounced, always welcome. She never stayed too long. Never asked for anything. Sometimes we just sat with tea, talking about nothing in particular, sometimes saying nothing at all. Her presence was real, never performative. She didn't come to check up, she came to be with me. One afternoon she found the old photo albums. We were searching for the charger to my radio when I opened the wrong drawer in the sideboard. Out tumbled a stack of leather-bound albums, their corners curling, pages loose. "Can I look?" she asked. "Of course," I said. She turned the pages slowly, her face lighting up at every photo. Robert and me on the porch in 1971. Linda at 10 missing her front tooth. My mother, proud and straight-backed, perched on a stool in our first kitchen. "Do you want me to scan these?" Emily asked. "So you'll have digital copies?" I smiled. "No. I like the weight of them. The way they smell." She nodded. "They feel real." And that's what this house had become again. Real. Not staged, not managed, not parceled out as someone's future prize. Just real. That night after she left, I opened the bottom drawer of the filing cabinet. Inside was the original will Linda had pushed in front of me, the one that named her sole heir, executor, steward of everything from the house to the teapot. I held it for a moment, not out of sentiment, but in awe that I'd almost let this be it. That my legacy might have been reduced to a tired signature. pressed from exhaustion. I shredded it slowly page by page. Not out of rage. Out of clarity. There's a time to hold on and a time to cut away rot. Linda wasn't evil. That's not the story I'll ever tell. She was just never with me, not the way I needed. She was with her ambitions, her expectations, her sense of entitlement. But I am with me now. And I am with Emily. And with this house creaking and leaking. Forgiving me every time I forget to water the philodendron in the window. Peace doesn't arrive like a parade. It isn't loud. It doesn't demand a toast. It's the quiet between dishes clinking in the sink. It's the softness of your own sheets. It's the realization that no one is coming to take what's yours, not because they've changed but because you have. This morning I opened a letter from Mr. Dawson. Heavy paper, embossed seal. No urgency in the postmark, just quiet finality. Inside, confirmation. Everything filed, recorded, notarized. The house, the accounts, the trust secured under my name, my will, with Emily written in exactly as I intended. Not because she asked, she never did, but because she showed up. I laid the papers on the kitchen table and just sat with them. Not to double-check. Just to feel them. Proof that a woman can rewrite the ending others planned for her. The windows were open. August air moved through the curtains like a sigh. The kind that slips out when you finally unclench your jaw. There's rhythm here now. Not the sharp clicking of Linda's heels. Not Mark's dragging footsteps. Just the kettle boiling, floorboards murmuring when no one steps on them. Sparrows tapping at the windowsill like they've claimed the place too. I watered the plants. Fed the stray cat that adopted me last spring. One blue eye, one yellow. She shows up only when she feels like it. Like me. The pharmacy called. I said no to auto-renewal. Yes to the slow version of life where nothing needs to be rushed unless it's going cold. Then I stepped onto the porch. The maple was shedding early, already tired of holding on. I sat in the rocking chair Robert built for me in 1984. From leftover pantry lumber he refused to waste. The armrests were smooth as memory, still fit the curve of my hands. And I thought about voice. How easy it is to lose it. How quietly people take it from you. A suggestion here, a signature there, a raised eyebrow, a decision made when you're too weary to argue. And then one day you realize, the story of your life is being told by someone else. But I took it back. Not with fists. Not with shouting. I took it back with pens and locks and long walks to the bank. With words spoken steady across a kitchen table. With the gentle refusal of help that came with greedy hands. People think aging means shrinking. They see bent backs, pillboxes, walkers and assume we've gone soft inside. But we don't. We sharpen. Our memories cut cleaner. They're not loops anymore, they're edges. And if you hold one too long, you might bleed. I know Linda will come back someday. Maybe for Christmas. Maybe after hearing my name from someone else. She'll come with a new smile and a softened voice, talking about forgiveness like it's a currency. I won't be cruel. But I won't unlock anything either. She made her choices. I've made mine. At last we are two separate people. If I see Mark, I'll nod. Not because I owe him grace, but because grace is mine to give and mine to withhold. Emily is coming this weekend. She wants to paint the pantry. Says it's time the shelves held something new. She's right. We'll eat cornbread, drink 2 sweet lemonade, maybe put on a record. And I'll tell her not how I lost everything but how I almost did and how I didn't. Because that's the story worth passing down. Not the pain. The decision. The choice to live while it's still yours to live. To speak, even when your voice shakes. To guard the deed, not just to the house but to yourself. And if you're reading this, if you've come this far, maybe it's time you did the same. Not loudly. Not all at once. Just one drawer at a time. One no at a time. One morning where you stay entirely yours. And maybe, just maybe, that's how it all begins again.